And Paul comes and fulfills a bit of that, fleshes it out a bit more, and allows the church to see that we are the embodiment of Christ, given to the world to show what it means to embody the love of Christ for God's people. And of course, here we are as we continue in the apostolic tradition of being sent out into the world, being called by God to continue sharing the love of Christ. And so we come to this place in your ministry journey as you look at full connection and also being ordained elders or we have, our deacons and of course our elders as well, but being called into full connection at this point. And so as you listen to the video that we present that you watched before coming here, just want to see if there are any questions about anything that you're facing as you're thinking about the meaning of ordination, because going to full connection and being ordained, you're set free in the world as representatives of the church, becoming those resident theologians and being able and free to serve anywhere in the conference and indeed the United Methodist Church, following our policy and procedures. So I invite you to ask any questions that you might have at this time.
Yeah, the process that we'll use throughout this meeting is if you've got a question, use the react button to raise your hand. Also try to watch if you forget and raise your hand. And I guess if all else fails, just interrupt and unmute and say something. Bomba?
Yeah, I wanted Reverend Carl to kind of give a little bit more understanding for what I got as far as the accord is. Accord is general. My understanding, call Christian call is general. We are all called.
Mm-hmm.
There are some that are set apart to be led by God to do specific work in ministry, such as pastors.
All right. Thank you for asking that question. As you know, one of the reasons that you go through this process in the United Methodist Church is that we recognize that God calls people, but we also recognize the fact that perhaps our ministries may not necessarily be best lived out in the United Methodist Church. Therefore, we have this process in the United Methodist Church where you become, you go to your local church. You start with your pastor, as you may have remembered from reading what the Christian is minister. You go in talking to your pastor, you talk to your SPRC, you talk to the church, the district, have all of these different layers because we recognize that God calls us into ministry, but the church also affirms that calling. And so we have it at different levels. As you said, Fumba, that people are set apart by God to lead the church in this distinctly spiritual or dimension of their lives. And so that's why we're all called as ministers of Christ, generally speaking, as Christians, to spread the gospel and spread the love of Christ. But the church recognizes that God does set apart some people for the specific ministry of ordained ministry.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, other questions?
I have a question for Carl.
Yes, Josh.
What's the best way to get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of who?
You.
Oh, you can send me an email. That you said the best way, probably texting.
Okay. Well, I don't have your number, so could I get that on an email?
Oh,
so
sure.
So you don't have to give it out to everyone. You're on my discernment team, and I would like to just sit down and get a little more wisdom from you. So.
All right then.
All right. Thank you.
All right, anything else? Okay, with that, we're going to turn to Lucy Robbins, and she's going to talk to us about what to expect.
Hey everyone, it's good to see you all. Many of you um, times in the past as you've gone through the process of REOM, and just grateful for your gifts in ministry and how you live those out each and every day. And so um, I'm here as representing the REOM relations team, and working with you all and your mentors, and for some of you conversation partners, and just trying to help kind of navigate the process from where we start today with orientation to what's coming down the pipe before we get to interview day in February and or March. And so I know you've had a chance to watch the video, and just really want to open it up to you all to ask any questions as it relates to that.
Anybody have any questions for Lucy?
Yeah, let me ask, as Fumba, uh, I want to ask Reverend Lucy to kind of give those of us who I haven't actually been able to uh, go through the interview, uh, but 2 times I've had problem with even passing the interview process before even getting to the discernment team. So so this, if it's God's willing, I believe this year I will meet the board or the discernment team. But my question is, what are some of those things that uh, we expect? Like for me, I'm expecting that uh, we be highlighted, and that the board or the discernment team will expect of me, because there's this kind of little fear uh, when you're going before this board. These are theologians, so you want to make sure that you're your best and doing the things that they will love to see from you. So my question is, how do we get ourselves ready for those kind of interaction with the discernment team?
Yes, Foma, that's a great question, and as one who, if, as you said, hasn't had a chance to come before your team, I expect there is some question there. Everything we're going to do over the next several months will be geared toward helping prepare you for that process. Um, and so, yes, so even attending the writing workshop will be something that you'll have the chance to participate in, which will help from the paperwork standpoint. And then there will be some mock interviews that are held in January, I believe, to help prepare you for February and March interviews. You'll also have a chance just to ask questions along the way of your peers as perhaps they have gone before the board. We're looking for you to be your best self, and to be able to reflect your experiences in ministry as you've come to understand them in your role and how you are serving. For full connection, you're basically sharing with us how you highlighting the gifts that you show, and the fruit that has been born from your ministry work. But also being able to complement that alongside your understanding of the theology. I think sharing more of you and less of the theology, the theological concepts, and things of that nature, being able to tell us about who you are and what you've learned and how God has been at work through you in this season of preparation that we call REOM, will be a good way to highlight some of that. And I think your conversation partner that you're going to have is really going to help you kind of talk through a lot of those things. And not everybody will have a conversation partner. So if that hasn't come up and you haven't heard that phrase, don't worry. But some of you will have one, and that simply is another person to help kind of shepherd you along the path. But on the day of the interview, one of the things that the board is always interested in is learning from you just as much as we are learning from one another, and that it is an opportunity for you to share and grow, all of us to grow together as we become stronger ministers in our own right. So, does that help answer a little bit?
But one of those things I wanted to make sure is that I don't want to leave uncovered. This is what God has called me to do, and I want to make sure that I'm not an exception to the rule. Last year I was deferred because I did the questions that were out of the quadrennium, and they said that they couldn't. A few questions that I missed over there. Not that I didn't answer the questions, but they were not included in the quadrennium, so that's where I was deferred. And I'm glad Reverend Carr was on that board, who came to talk to me about it, and I really appreciated his advice and all that they have done to keep me going. My question here, this year we have a new information from the questions that are very, very important, and I want to make sure that I don't make any mistake on that. It has to do with our writings that project something of an AI generated, not just plagiarism. It used to be plagiarism, but now we have added another technology to the paper, which has to do with AI generated words, which somehow is something new to everybody. But we don't know how much that is, because when you are writing and you have a Grammarly attached to your papers and you are typing and doing whatever you do, there are little suggestions that come out. Oh, use this word. Oh, this word is more this and that, and you're juggling in between as you're. I'm putting my own words there, but what does the Grammarly suggest to me? Oh, this word is preferable, and sometimes I refuse to accept it.
Yeah,
And yeah,
I'm gonna interrupt you. I apologize for
yeah,
that.
that's good.
We are going to have someone talk with us about the authenticate, and we'll get into the AI policy and conversation in just a little bit. For right now, what you're saying is true, is that you do have to use Grammarly in a judicious and cautious way. And I would say just for grammar and not for content. So thank you. Go a little bit deeper into that in just a bit. Jacob, do you have a question for Lucy?
Yes, I don't know if you're going to address this now, but I'm curious to hear a little more about, particularly in the theology section. Like the vocation section is obviously talking about me, my experiences in ministry, but for the theology section, I wonder if y'all have any thoughts on how to include an explanation of the theological concept in conjunction with the actual ministry practice. So kind of that balance. I'm curious.
Jonathan, can you cover that when we get to your section?
Absolutely.
And I would just say too, a lot of these questions are pretty in depth based on your own experiences, and certainly want to take all of that into consideration. Remember that next week we'll also be having our in-person time together. If you feel like something doesn't get answered here today, bring that with you next week, and we'll have a lot of more time to kind of work on that and explaining. So.
And people who are in the 4-year plus realm, I just want to just remind you, just in case you missed it in the email, you're also invited to come to the 3rd-year realm writing workshop too. So you can do both if you want.
Okay. All right, I'm going to turn to Holly McKim now, and she's going to talk with us about the section on vocation and call and discipline life.
Good morning, colleagues. I'm so delighted to see all of you. Some of you I have met and I know fairly well, and some of you I look forward to seeing you in the spring of the year. I just want you to take a deep breath. You have done this before, but I want to just explain what the expectations are, especially for vocation and leadership, that portion of your written work. We so enjoyed getting to know you when you wrote for your provisional papers. This time, we know you're called. We know you have been in ministry these 2 to 3 years, or maybe some of you been in ministry. Timothy, I know you've been in ministry much longer than that. What we're looking for in that particular portion of your paper, your written work, we want to know the partnership between your call, answering that call, the partnership with experience that you've had in the last several years. How is maybe your relationships, the influential relationships on your pathway to ordination, have they changed? Have you developed new influential relationships? How about your strengths? Do you have the same strengths that you had when you wrote your provisional papers? Do you have new strengths? Do you have new growing edges? Do you have new things to share with us, perhaps in the context of your ministry? Dan Hester did a wonderful video. I hope if you haven't watched it, please go back and watch it on our YouTube, WNC, UMC, Board of Ordained Ministry YouTube. Megan can maybe put that in the chat. Dan Hester had a wonderful video. He talked about the difference between provisional time and writing your papers for full connection as like going to Home Depot and taking the Saturday seminar on how to build a doghouse and getting things just right and plumb and how to cut and how to measure and how to build. And then the real life happens. Going to Appalachian Service Project or something like that and having to build something there where nothing is level, where wood, you don't have maybe the right tools. And so what we're looking for in vocation and leadership is, how have you adapted? How have you made decisions within your context? How is the experience of ministry where you have been, where you've been appointed, or where you have been working? How have those things changed you for good or for maybe not so good? But we can use even those experiences that cause us more growth. We can use those for our good. So those are the kinds of things that we're really hoping to read in that portion of your written work, vocation and leadership. Where are the things that, where have you changed? We still want to know you as a ministering person, and we still want you to do your best work. We still want you to write your own work, and we still want you to be sure and get people to read your written work. Make sure that you can turn in the best work that you can possibly turn in. And here's a secret. If you turn your paperwork in early and there's something that you left out, or if there's a problem, generally your paper can come back to you and you can fix those areas and then resubmit. So that's just a little bit of a hint. The Board of Ordained Ministry does want you to succeed, and we are praying for you and uplifting you because, well, next annual conference, we want to be able to stand with you as you are ordained on that stage. And I'm open for any questions. I gave this opportunity to the group before you. If are any of you associate pastors or not in a pastoral setting right now? And the reason I'm asking, do you have, Josh,
Associate pastor.
do you have opportunities to preach?
Yeah, I preach about once a month.
Okay. If any of you don't have opportunities to preach, I invite you to come up to Spruce Pine and practice on us. Give us a good word. Not that I want to lay out a Sunday, I'll be there, but I just want to be sure everyone has opportunity to preach. You might want to do your written proclamation, and someone else will be talking about that, but you might want to do your written proclamation in the context in where you are. Remy, Remy had to leave. Yes. So, yes, thank you, Megan. She put my email on the chat, and reach out to me, and I'd love to see you anytime. Thank you, Laura.
Anybody have questions for Holly? Okay.
Yes.
So how
Holly-
early is early enough to submit and then get feedback?
Do you mean submit to?
I think, Holly, you were mentioning like our ordination papers.
Yes. I heard it multiple times over the last several years. If they had just submitted their paper early, like maybe even a week early before the deadline, maybe even 2 weeks early, I'm not sure I would submit.
Are you, I want to,
I don't think Holly's referring, like, they're not going to give you feedback on the content of your paper. She's talking about, like, if you are missing, like, a section, or if you know,
Your
did
link doesn't
video
work.
wrong or something, some logistical part, people,
Right.
they'll let you know so that it won't affect you. So, like, what, like if you skipped a question or something like that, but not like on the actual content.
Right. Or like if your proclamation link or your Bible study link doesn't work, they can give you feedback on that. Or even I've heard Jim Sanders talk about the authenticate process. If there's a problem, it can be addressed if you have turned your work in a little bit early. If you wait till the deadline and then there's a problem, something you left out, the link doesn't work.
yeah. So Holly, one of the things, and you don't know this, but we're working on a checklist that all of the candidates will have to kind of help you make sure that you've got everything. And that checklist will be used by discernment team chairs so that, again, another level of assurance that you haven't left off something that's easily fixed.
And
Right.
we're
And
going
to
to
do
have a
that
draft of the checklist at REOM next week, but we are going to let the exec board look at it to make sure nothing's missing. And if something was, I would resend it out to you, highlight what was missing on it, and let you know.
Yeah.
But you guys will have access to that next week.
Okay. Yep. But that we're really trying to avoid what Holly's talking about, and to do our part as a board for that. And also so that you've got the tools that you need so that you can have agency in that as well. Thank you, Holly, for helping with that. Jacob, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Holly. When we're writing this vocation section and talking about our experiences in ministry, I could see including stories about like say example, when we did our CLE projects, that's kind of like a broad view. Here's what we're doing with our church. And also some of these questions we're really going to do at like a micro level, like with one-on-one or one-on-two or whatever, smaller interactions. Is there a preference for different types of ways that you want to see that? Obviously, I guess leadership, you want to see how we're involved in the broader vision, but I don't know if you have any else things to add about.
An example. Thank you, Jacob. An example. You might have started out 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and you felt like your strengths were preaching and administration. But then as you get into pastoral ministry, you realize, hey, I do pastoral visits really well, pastoral care. And here are some things I've gotten feedback on. People have said, I really appreciated your thank you note, or I really appreciate your visit with me when I was recuperating. That's just a simple example. But how have these years as a provisional person shaped you, changed you? What have you learned? Have you adapted? How have different circumstances changed the way you make decisions about things? How do you prioritize things? Is that helpful?
Yes, so if we're going to tell like a specific example of a situation or incident or success, like a micro story, make sure we're linking that to the broad subject of what, like, how have we done listening? Tell a story about listening, explain what that says broadly about listening.
And within the vocation paper portion of your written work, there are different topics that you can write on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Jacob.
Blake?
Hey, I guess it's sort of like a broader question about not just necessarily this section, but like in general. It's just thinking in my mind, you're talking about like, yeah, referring to, of course, like our, how we've changed, adapted, grown in our experience in that. It made me think, am I allowed to reference my previous papers in that way? Like, oh, I wrote this last time. Would there be like a proper way to do that? Or just say like, hey, when I started that process. So like, I guess what I'm saying is like, hey, I wrote about this, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And, I was looking at it this way, and over my experience, I've changed in this way. Would it be proper for me? I guess I'm asking is to refer that, like, I mean, to, reference all that, or just kind of just say when I started the process, is, is there, or does it matter, I guess?
Yeah, I think you can certainly do that. And sometimes that would be really illustrative of how you've grown. You don't want to spend so much time describing what you've already done or articulated that it eats up pages, but I think that would be received very well. Any of those of you who read a lot of papers, any thoughts about that?
I think one of the keys is that we look at the provisional process of what you've learned, because you go in with a lot of theory, I think we would say, but then that gives you an opportunity to apply what you have learned. And as you point out, Blake, there may be something that you have learned and realized when I came in, I looked at things this way, but now that I've had the practical experience of applying it in my ministry setting, I see now these are the changes that I have observed, or I have changed my perspective. So that's what I think, in a sense, is really what we're looking for, the integration of what you've learned and how you've applied it, and perhaps the difference it's making in your own life, in your own ministry, and perhaps the people that you're serving as well. Hope that helps.
So you could like quote, like, in my commissioning papers, I articulated my call and say in this like one sentence, and then say, this sentence has been developed, broadened, challenged, whatever it is. And we have just a footnote that says like Jacob Lancaster commissioning papers section. Yeah. Okay.
I know many of you personally, that from graduating from theological education to the practice of ministry, there's so much that you don't learn in the classroom. Where do you learn it? You learn it right there in your setting. The how-tos actually do something. So those are the kinds of experiences that we're hoping to hear from you, especially in this section of your written work. What have you learned? And how have you put it into real practice in ministry?
I'm going to turn to Jonathan, and he is going to talk about the theology section, theological understanding and leadership section. Jonathan?
Sure. Thanks. It's great to be with y'all today. It's good to see all of you. And I'm Jonathan Marlowe, and I'm a pastor here in Cornelius at Mount Zion. And so the theology section of your papers, and I want to talk just generally for a few minutes about that. And Jacob, I remember your question from earlier, which has kind of been somewhat addressed even just within the last 10 minutes. But if we don't answer it enough, please chime back in and let me know if you want more. But I'll just say generally about the theology section, and hopefully you've had a chance to watch the video as you prepare for this process. But just to lift up a couple of things that were mentioned in the video that are really important for us to remember as you work on your theology section. I guess one of the potential problems that people come into in their theology paper, sometimes they write as if they know too much, and sometimes they write as if they know too little. Those sometimes we're tempted to write as though we know too much, in the sense that we think we know everything about God, and we've got God contained in this little box, and we've got him in our hip pocket, and we can pull it out, and there are easy answers, 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, and it's very simplistic, and we already know all the answers, and we know everything. That's dangerous, because God is inexhaustible, and there is always an element of mystery in our understanding of God. So we don't want to write as if we know everything about God. St. Augustine said, if you understand it completely, it's not God. So we don't want to make that mistake. The other mistake, though, would be to write as if we know too little about God, because God has revealed himself to us in a beautiful way, definitively in Jesus Christ. And so there are definitive things we can say about God. God is not just a complete nebulous question mark out there. And God is not a generic, vague God. God is the God who's revealed God's self in Jesus Christ. And so there are certain things we can say about God as Trinity, God, the Holy Spirit, who continues to work in and through us. And so we don't want to leave it vague or nondescript or generic. We don't believe in a generic God. We have specific beliefs, and we want to, let that be reflected in your theology paper. The other thing I'll mention, and then I want to get to Jacob's question and any other questions. One of the issues that pops up in the theology section of some people's papers is this question of how to use quotations, specifically in the theology section, because that's where a lot of times people tend to quote some theologian or some theological source or the Book of Discipline or something else, and that can be helpful. I'm not at all discouraging you from using a quotation in your theology papers. But if and when you use quotations in your theology papers, make them relatively brief and kind of punchy to make a direct point and show how that supports your theological argument. Don't just make it a book report in which you say, well, this theologian wrote this and this theologian wrote that, and the Book of Discipline says that, and then that's your answer. Because that wouldn't be a good answer. Make sure that if you use quotations, they're relatively brief, they're specific, and that you incorporate them into your wider theological argument, into your theological argument, not merely quoting what other people think and say, but making it a part of your theology. So that's important if and when you use quotations in your theology papers. Now, let me see. Jacob's question was about, articulate your question one more time for me, Jacob, just to refresh my memory.
How do you think about the balance between the theology, like, because like we get a question like, how is the practice ministry shape your understanding of justification? At some level, I've got to state what I understand justification to be. And
Yes.
also, I want to include examples and stories and reflections on how that shows up in my ministry, how to balance that, especially for like some of these are really complex questions, like that you could really talk theologically about for a much longer paper than you have space for it here. How have you led someone to, oh no, excuse me, how is Christian faith good news for those who do not believe it? That's a great question, but I could wax on that theologically for ages. So particularly for those like meaty theological questions, the balance between explanation of the theology and explanation of how it shows up in my ministry.
Yeah. So a good response to those questions is not to make it purely academic and theoretical. There'll be some theory involved and obviously some theology involved. And you can talk about the doctrine of justification, for example. But don't leave it there, and don't spend so many pages, 3 or 4 pages, talking about your doctrine of justification in a way that doesn't leave room for you to talk about it in more practical, personal experiences, such as your own experience of justification and an experience of justification that you've been a witness to and a part of in the setting of your local ministry. So don't make it so much, although you're right, you could spend many pages talking about a doctrine. We want you to do some of that, but don't do it to the exclusion of talking about the ways that you've seen that embodied in your local ministry setting, because we want to hear both. We want to hear both.
And we could, like in commissioning papers, I would take and say 2 pages to talk about evil and sin. But we can leave out some of the intricacies of how we understand that, and then if there's something missing there, we can spell that out in our actual interview. If you need more.
Yeah, and if we see some part of the question that you haven't answered fully, then we'll definitely ask you about it in the interview. Yeah, and as you mentioned, the first time you came through for provisional membership, the emphasis was on the academic, theoretical part of your understanding of ministry. And now when you're coming through for full connection and being ordained, either deacon or elder, we definitely do want to see the impact that had in your local church setting, in your ministry setting, and how it was embodied there, and how it shaped you, how it shaped those around you, those with whom you share ministry. Yeah. So we do want to see both, definitely.
I don't think there's like a hard and fast like percentage or ratio.
Yeah, I can't really give you an exact, I can't be more exact than that. I think it just depends on how you're going to write about it and what ministries and what experiences you're going to talk about. I don't have an exact percentage other than to say they're both important.
All right, other questions for Jonathan? Okay, Aldana Allen is here, Pastor Allen, and he is going to introduce himself and talk about the proclamation section for the papers and interviews.
Yeah. Good afternoon to everybody. It's good to be able to be here with you. And it's always great to follow my good friend, Jonathan. I think he teed up this next section well with that very last part, because when we get to thinking about proclamation and telling the story, it is a great place for you to be able to also put some more of you in it, into the story, Now, ultimately, of course, we're telling the good news of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, but what a perfect place for you really to add theology and experience is going to be in the proclamation and the Bible study. But before I get too far into that, let me again say my name is Aldana Allen. I serve as the pastor at St. Mark's in the Metro District. And I also have the opportunity to serve as the chair of the Elders Orders and the Board of Ordained Ministry this quadrennium. Last quadrennium, I was also on the board and have had just a wonderful experience. It's always a delight seeing candidates come through in various stages and seeing people adhering to the call that God has placed upon their hearts. So thank you for being here. It's my understanding you've already seen the video, so I'll try not to cover too much ground that's in there. But I would just add just one or two other parts to it. I'm sure you've also already heard some language around finding your voice. I would definitely double down on that. Speaking with authenticity allows the message to flow from a place of honesty and integrity and spirit-led conviction. And I am a firm believer that when you incorporate your own living experience and connect it back to this personal encounter with God, the sermon gains a depth that mere theory cannot match. I'll just give one very, very brief example, not to hold myself up as some paradigm of preaching, but I'm doing Bishop Snazy's book, The Five Practices of Fruitful Congregations. And this past Sunday, the sermon was on risk-taking mission and service. And so I just started with a general question of when was the earliest time that you can remember taking a risk? And I started with a story about stealing the first time the coach told me to steal second base, that I was safe as long as my foot was still touching the bag on first base and as long as my hand could still touch the bag, but I had to risk in order to go on greater things. And so again, there's space for personal encounter that then magnifies God, and there's space for a connection with the congregation in ways that I think that again preaching and Bible study just avail themselves to. Certainly, we still want to hear the theological depth. I believe I did say in the video we want to begin with Scripture. Please do not take a text and then go some way far away from it. We want good exegetical grounding. We want the text to be brought to life. We want exegesis and not eisegesis. So tell us what it says. What did it mean to the original hearers? And then what are you conveying to the congregation in which you were speaking, the target audience that's there listening to you on this day? But I also would still lean into remembering the good news. This is a reminder that I get frequently. I have the joy of having a bishop in our congregation. Bishop Palmer has retired and made his way to St. Mark's. And so sometimes on Fridays, he'll call me and try to get a heads up on the message. And he'll say, in one sentence, Pastor, he says, Elder, he says, in one sentence, Elder, what is the good news? What's the evangelion? And so I would offer that as a marker for you as well. That certainly you want to have a message that is vibrant with theology, that has personal experience, where we can hear your voice, not the work of AI, but we can hear your voice at the same time that speaks to the good news that the people are yearning for. In every sermon, the goal should be to lift the hope of the gospel, to declare that through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, there's forgiveness and freedom and new life for all who believe. And so it's a high challenge, it's a high calling, but it's one that we have the privilege of living into and trying to be. Some housekeeping notes, again, as you've seen from the videos and other instructions. Of course, you want to make sure you're citing your materials as you go along. There are a lot of stories that make the circuits. You may have heard so-and-so say something. Just still give credit to that. Say, I heard whoever say this one time, and make note of that. And also be aware that sometimes you may say something in the moment. If you're not normally a manuscript preacher, if you're an extemporaneous, or even if you are more manuscript, but something comes up in the moment, what we receive as the board, as the discernment team, they have to match. They have to match all the way through. And so we encourage you to watch your own videotape, to go back and watch what was recorded, and then to write what you actually said. And so if there's a few words that are off here and there, go back and correct that in your manuscript so that they sync well with what you actually send the team that will be reviewing your materials. I'm sorry. And one other thing too, I believe at the time, whenever I recorded my message, I was probably even reflecting back on my own experience where we had a set of assigned texts, but I do want to take a moment to correct that. You have a set of assigned dates in which you need to do your message, but you don't have a set of assigned texts. And so you don't have to use the lectionary. You can certainly, but you don't have to use the lectionary through that time period. But those dates are the time frame in which you have to record your message, and you can record more than one. It has been suggested. I think I heard Brother Jonathan say in a previous gathering, it's a good idea to maybe record 2 or 3. And then if you want to get together with a couple of folks and get their thoughts and say, which one of these did I really show up the best? Which one of these was the clearest? I want to put forth my best work. And so which one of these would fit that? So that's what I wanted to share with you primarily. I'm open for any questions if anybody has any. I have wowed you with my eloquence.
Always, Aldana, as always.
Is there anything that would be helpful when we're submitting like our Bible study documents? I'm not like a curriculum writer, so I'm not really sure exactly. I'm figuring out the format for that, but like, does it make sense? What do you want to see in the Bible study documents that we submit?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I was the discernment team chair, in the documents themselves, I wanted to get a sense of readability, right? Did it make sense? Was there a clear enough outline? Could I get a sense of the flow of where it was beginning and moving toward? And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that it had to it had to rival some other materials that I'd seen, but was it competently put together, right? And so I think if you have a clear organizational pattern and an outline, that'll go a long way. And then in terms of watching the video itself, of course, we want to see how you're interacting, right? Sometimes there could be moments of silence, right? There could be just flat out dead silence. How are you handling that? Are you giving adequate enough time? Or is your own anxiety raising, and so you feel like you've got to jump in and say something, or how do you handle those kind of moments, or the reverse? What happens if there are so many comments and so many questions, and then it starts to derail? How are you able to bring it back together? Because again, several of these topics can start pulling at strings, and the whole thing starts. I mean, it's great conversation, but it can get you off of what you were going for in that particular Bible study. And so, how far do you let that go? And then at what point do you say, well, let me get us back to this part of the text?
Other questions for Aldana? Okay, Jim Sanders is with us, and he is a member of the board and works with the Authenticate, which is the plagiarism software that we use. And he's going to share with us some things that will be helpful for you.
Thank you. My voice is getting stronger. I haven't had a voice for a couple of days. So I mentioned in an earlier session, I probably sounded like Katharine Hepburn, and somebody said, "Who's Katharine Hepburn?" So, so I have for several years led the Authenticate team, often officially maybe called the anti-plagiarism team. Although I will tell you that we are not the police sort of out to catch a thief, catch a scoundrel. If we were in the old system where candidates appeared before different boards, one of the different committees. One of those was called an examination of the call and the disciplined life. And that's where I'm convinced that this authenticate plagiarism whole conversation would show up, because so often when folks have trouble, it's not because they were really trying to be dishonest or out to fool anyone, but it's because they got ahead of themselves, they got behind, they got in a hurry, they didn't do careful work, lost track of what sources were coming from where. And so most often when we have issues with when issues surface, it usually points to something sort of larger going on in the background that is not someone setting out to be intentionally dishonest or to steal somebody else's intellectual materials or ideas. So as I said in the video, that if you work thoughtfully and carefully, keep track of what you're referencing and what your sources are. Your footnotes, they do not have to follow any particular style. It is very helpful for your reader if you would just pick a style and be consistent all the way through. We've had candidates that, as they've sort of decided that part of a undergraduate paper or a div school paper or a course of study paper would fit right in as an answer, didn't bother to change the specific footnoting style that professor required. And so you can see as they go through their paper that it's as if you're sort of doing a geological study of the different courses just by looking at the different styles of footnoting that they've had, because they didn't bother to try to heal the differences there. Your footnotes really are a conversation with your reader. And so on something I think Aldana said, if you tell a story and you just have no idea where that story came from, you've heard it 1,000 times, then a footnote that says, I have tried, this has been passed around, I've heard it 1,000 times, I cannot figure out what the primordial source is for that. That's fair game for a footnote, because again, your readers are using your footnote to kind of, and your bibliography. Many folks forget the fact that a bibliography, which is not just a regurgitation of in your notebook, but the other things that were substantially important to you in your writing, kind of like somebody sitting and looking at the books on the shelf over your shoulder, wondering like which resources they just sort of see and which ones look familiar. You don't have to overpopulate to impress your bibliography, but it really is just, so if someone wants to ask you about one of those, that you would be prepared to kind of talk about it. So your footnotes become kind of kind of like the runner at the bottom of the screen conversation with your reader, and they just tell us sort of what is going through your head or what was spread out on your desk. I will tell you that, and that's why when, especially in this world, when those of us who wrote papers and literally had papers around us, it was a little easier perhaps, although not always, to keep track of what was coming from where. But what we have encountered in the last couple of years are people who are doing all electronic sort of referencing. And so they do the first step of, I'll just cut and paste this into my paper, and then later I'll go back and use it as a resource, but somehow they forget that it wasn't originally theirs, or they lost the little footnote tag that went with it, and it became a paragraph in their paper, when it really was something that they maybe initially pasted in thinking it was going to be useful to them as they were doing their writing. That's kind of how sometimes folks sort of have the shock of realizing that they just lost track of what all they were sort of pulling in and resourcing. So we use a service called Authenticate, which comes from Turnitin. Many of you may have encountered that in other academic settings. Our particular subscription is through the General Board of Higher Education and Ministry. It contains all the papers for a number of years turned in including your previous ones, if you've turned in papers previously to the board, plus all the other annual conferences that co-subscribe with us. And so as a result of that, I always advise people not to go out and spend money on a plagiarism detection tool, which some folks who just are maybe hyper nervous about it have done, because it simply just doesn't have all of the resources. For those of you who have previous papers that you're bringing work forward to, that is up to you to do. Someone asked me, what about my call story? It hasn't changed very much. Your call story remains your call story if you are telling it. But the first thing that Authenticate will likely return is your previous paper, all color coded, saying like this whole section, these 5 pages all came from a previous paper. That may be absolutely legitimate. And then your reader can strip that out and look at the things that may have been tagged, many of which are quite legitimate. Like we get tags on all the Bible quotes and all the, so it's not, we have to kind of wade through all of them. And most of them are just are fine and legitimate and interesting. So don't worry about that. But if your reader sees that you just essentially are turning in whole and wholesale a previous paper, whether you're in the committee, it was a previous generation of your work, you just need to be prepared to have that conversation. If someone says, I notice this is essentially the 2022 paper or the 2020 paper or whatever, just be prepared. So that's not, there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to kind of have that in your head that that's kind of the first thing that they will see. We also this year at annual conference at a meeting passed an AI policy with the idea that kind of follows the theme of our Authenticate work, which is that what we really want to see is your work. And so the official policy is that candidates are not to use AI and AI type resources to do your work unless you've used it to build a component of your work. So if you had ChatGPT write a limerick based on a parable of Jesus, then there are instructions for tell us which service you used and what your prompt was. And that may very well become kind of an interesting point of conversation with your committee. But so if you're using it to do your work, like to build a component of your work and feel that that's necessary, that is fine. But using it to assist with the writing or the revision of your work is not permitted with the policy passed at annual conference, the annual conference meeting. So, questions?
Are we uploading something in Authenticate, or are you doing that when we submit our paper?
So you submit all your papers, as the instructions say, as a PDF document.
Yeah.
We submit because that's the friendliest. And also PDFs are good because your fonts and it preserves your pagination, which is important for your readers to know how you wanted this to be viewed, including the way you've arranged your whatever you've put in your paper and your footnotes and all that stuff. So we'll submit your PDF and run that through Authenticate. And then again, it returns, like if you write a very thorough paper, it'll come back to us color coded with all kinds of references, mostly, and it is a pretty labor intensive process. And so for instance, the major quotes of Wesley show up again and again and again, right? Those, brand from the burning, those phrases. And the initial result that we may see is that Jane Smith from the Virginia Annual Conference wrote a paper and used the same footnote and the same reference. Like that, like we're not sort of worried about, like we might not get a reference to the original text. We might get a reference to someone else's paper and then refers to the original text. And it's because we have this walled garden of all these papers. So have some patience and some kindness for your Authenticate reviewer, because really what we're doing, it's a pretty interesting thing, is just kind of seeing, and your committee is interested in seeing who you're in conversation with across the academy, across just out in the secular world, whose thoughts are you kind of drawing on and bringing into your paper. So, but we do that work.
I don't want to sign myself up for any more work, but I just want to say thanks, Jim, and I'm very interested in what the conversations are like at the conference level about AI, because some of the loneliest people that I encounter in ministry are getting their therapy from AI right now. And just wondered, like, I mean, I know it's going to shape our ministry, and just I'm sure that those conversations are fascinating. And I appreciate your nuanced approach of like, hey, this is a tool, a lot of industries are using it, but how do we do this in an ethical way? So just wanted to say thanks.
Right. And you can take a conference sponsored seminar on how to use AI in your ministry. So, I mean, we're not saying that it doesn't have a role, but what we did decide in our conversations was that this is an opportunity. So your papers really are meant to be kind of like a blue book sort of work, in the sense of what really is in your head and in your heart. And so it's and that's where we arrived, was that we really need to see your work and your thoughtfulness. In a previous session today, someone said, well, what if I then run it through and they named a service and they say, here's a better way to write this paragraph, right? So, which is a slippery slope from the word processors for a long time. The first version was just suggesting a synonym or correcting what it perceived to be a grammar error or a punctuation error. So that's kind of the toe in the water, and that's like we're asking people to have proofreaders. Also, if you want to know if someone is an experienced proofreader, then they'll typically know that to look at punctuation, they should be reading your paper backward, which is really the only way to sort of spot, because of the way our brains kind of smooth over errors going forward, to sort of read things. So you still want people to read your paper for, looking at it from the point of the theological task that you're at, and then the mechanical stuff, may be helpful to somebody who's really just reading it, to see if the commas and periods and all that stuff, because we see not often, but we see hurried work where, and what that does is it creates a distraction for your reader. Like someone who uses 6 different styles of footnoting in their paper because they pulled things in, it creates a distraction for your reader. You want your reader to be thinking about you and your stories that you're telling, and the lessons that you're teaching in your work, and not wondering what you were also doing as you were writing this paper. So.
Hey, Jim, this is Famba. Hey, I kind of lean into the question of the AI earlier, and Reverend Laura told me to wait that you were coming, and I'm glad that you came to address this. But I know, having worked with this with plagiarism and Authenticate for a long time, this new tool that had just come called AI kind of make me kind of afraid. Sometimes using Grammarly, there are words that you use, and Grammarly is suggesting that, say, for instance, if you use the word important, and then it says you need to use essential instead of important. And when you write a sentence, it's giving you suggestions that, these words are AI generated vocabularies. and you're wondering why these things are popping up, and sometimes it creates, you write a sentence and it kind of transforms the sentence for you in a way that looks good, but it's some of the words are being changed. Just the vocabulary, for instance, are being changed. And it suggests that those are AI generated words. And does that have any impact on our papers?
Well, so we have had people also pay for Grammarly's. Apparently, they offer a plagiarism detection for an extra fee, and people have paid for that, not gotten results that match the results from us because we just simply have a different set of resources. And so I advise people to never pay for that. But I will say, Famba, that and for people who have multiple languages in their head, right? Those folks in particular, that you are uniquely you, and that you don't have to apologize for being uniquely you. And I would think that the board would rather hear your unique voice and your unique vocabulary than to hear something that sort of is a smoothed out middle America generic, making you sound like a newscaster from somewhere in the middle of the country. And so it's one thing to ask someone, can you just look at this and see if there's something that you might suggest to change? And if you use the word important, 14 times in 2 pages, they might say might want a little variety. But just something as simple as, if important is the word that came to your mind, and changing it to essential just because Grammarly told you to, in some ways robs you of your unique voice. We want it to sound like you wrote it. We're interested in you and your unique gift and your unique voice. And that means then that that you don't have to sound like every other candidate or the most polished grammarian candidate, right? So that's my best answer to that.
Is suffering important to the Christian experience, or is it essential? Sorry, I don't need to derail this, but there's a big difference, right? And so we got to be careful with the suggestions that like Grammarly can make for us.
Oh, you mean, okay. You're asking, you're saying, is it important or is it essential, depending and that's where we want to know, because we would much rather have a conversation about a particular word choice that came out of your thoughtfulness about that you could then enunciate, than for a member of the discernment team to say, I was fascinated by the fact that you use this particular word to describe something, and for you to know, well, that wasn't the word I originally picked. That's the word that Grammarly picked for me, right? We'd rather you that this be you, right? So you can talk about you and your capacity for language, or your love of not love of words, or whatever. So some of the other experienced folks might speak up, but I'm just advocating for you to do your work and to let us hear your voice, and to not worry about having to sound like some mythical perfect candidate somewhere. We would rather hear what is in your head and your heart.
Jim, I wanted to share with, particularly since Fumb asked the question, and it's very important, as Jim said, we want to hear who you are. We don't want to hear who Grammarly is or AI. And so that's why it's important to use the words that you use, because when you're doing ministry, you're not going to be talking like a theological treatise. You're going to be using your words. And so we want to have the experience of experiencing you. Of course, we want your papers theologically sound and as grammatically appropriate as possible, because that reflects your training. But also we want you to come through, your authentic self to come through, because that's a part of what people will be experiencing when you're in your church.
Excuse me, Jim, if I can just jump in a quick second. I couldn't find the link. I was trying to find it back on the conference website, but I did post at least a screenshot of the AI and the gospel in the chat. Um, I don't know what registration space looks like. Dr. Hand, last time I spoke to her, said that they were filling up pretty quick, but nevertheless, that's the information there for you. It should be September 15th, Monday. So, I mean, no, not Monday. Yeah, Monday, but the date isn't right. No, I'm sorry, that is right. Monday, September 15th. I started looking at the 15th being tomorrow, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I registered for that. I already paid for a spot for that.
Okay, do we feel like we're good on this section? Any other questions? Okay, so Chris Hampton typically does our IT part, and hopefully you watched his video, and it's really great. He's unable to be here. He is sick. So I'm gonna give you the link to like the page that has all the details and his number and the IT email if you have questions. He did give me kind of like his talking points, so I'm gonna mention those real quick. But I feel like you guys know how to do this. So like he said, full instructions are in the link and recorded in the video. So look there. But you need to have your documents must be in a Word or PDF format. And then you are going to put them in a Dropbox that Emma's going to send you. And like Jim said, PDF is the easiest one because like you said, it keeps your pagination and it's easy for authenticate. It has to be in one large document, and that'll be on the checklist too. So I want to just point that out. Let's see. Don't stress. He said for the video recording, if you're not techie, essentially it's capture, edit, upload. You can use your smartphone. I know lots of you, because everybody does like Facebook Live and stuff, so you might have something in your church, but in the case that you don't, you can get a smartphone, and you don't need a camera because most smartphones are better than cameras today. Frame yourself properly so it's not just your forehead or you're not too tiny. Do a test run. Make sure you have enough storage on your phone or whatever you're using before you start, because that could be not good. And then make sure you have strong internet and that kind of thing as well if you're doing it online, if you're doing a live stream or something, so that it's not glitchy. As far as editing, you only need to trim the start and the end part. And you don't need to do any special effects. And then you can also, I mean, you can do it on Canva. I know that like there's several free apps that you can use to kind of trim it down. And then when you upload it to YouTube using your clergy Gmail account or any other Gmail account. You have to do a YouTube video verification if it's over 15 minutes, and then set the video as unlisted unless you want it public. And then make sure you watch some of the upload to confirm that the audio and video are working properly for the Board of Ordained Ministry. And then, like I said, you can email Chris at it@wnccumc.org. He also gave his work number, and the website over here, the link, and I'll put this in an email too, is great. It gives you all the information that I feel like you could ever need for technological stuff. Yes, Jacob.
So I was just going to say I've recorded my Bible study, and one of the challenges was how to record a Bible study. So I just kind of got a good frame. But for like a video, if it's like the audio is like low on your video based on whatever it is, at least iMovie, and I'm sure other of the free video apps, you can just turn up what the actual audio is. So like I was able to just take the audio from the original recording to 400%, so you could actually hear some of the comments from people across the room. I don't know if that will be helpful to anybody else if they find that their audio doesn't catch certain things. So
And you know, you can do that on Canva too. And since you work, you know, at churches, you're able to get Canva free as a nonprofit. So I mean, that's an option as well. And you can do the same thing that Jacob was talking about, is turn your volume up, because I know Bible studies are they're different than recording like your service, church service. Any other questions?
Yeah, can I ask Megan for a minute? My sermons are recorded on every Sunday, and it's on YouTube, and I usually share with friends and people across the world. And I haven't seen any glitches during the sermon. Everything looks good. It has a YouTube link to it, and I share with people. Can I use that as part of my submission of my sermon, my proclamation, especially on the preaching side?
I mean, I think you'll have to follow the rules of the assignment, and what they want of that. I mean, I think it's an entire sermon or entire service. But I might re-upload it and just do what the instructions say. Or email Chris, he might give you better information. I don't know. I could be wrong on that. Do you have any thoughts, Meredith or Aldana?
Let me make sure I heard the question correct, because I'm thinking back on the one from earlier today. So
Yeah.
say your question again, make sure I heard it correctly.
Are you talking about me?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We are live on YouTube every Sunday morning. Our entire worship service is recorded, and usually I send that as I share the video with people around in Africa and places around the United States, and not only the congregation here. So my question is, I haven't really found any problem with my YouTube presentations, especially when it comes to proclamation. So can I use that? Is it possible to use that if it doesn't have a problem?
Yeah, I would think that'd be okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
there's
think it's
nothing that says
fine.
that the camera's got to be, 12 inches from your face, and whatever. If that's what your usual recording pattern is, I think that would be fine. Thank you for that question. We haven't had that one yet, and that's interesting as we continue to do this, right, Megan and Jonathan. I mean, it's I started from a time whenever cameras in the traditional worship space, that was a little taboo or whatever. And so bringing it in was like, oh, we're recording for the board. Now, of course, everybody has it in some form or fashion. And so, but yeah, if that, I mean, obviously you want to check it for the quality and audio and all that kind of stuff. But if you think it's a strong enough representation of you, then sure, I think that'd be okay to send.
Yeah, just make sure you're following whatever instructions are in the paper, and as long as it abides by that, I think it's fine.
I think I will send Alan one of my clips.
Sure, send it on, brother. I'll take a look.
For sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions, IT wise?
If he uses one of his sermons, it needs to be like between July and December, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, now that question, Lisa, has come up, and so now there was a question about, can you use a sermon that you've preached before? And Laura, the way she answered this, I don't want to speak for her, but I think she stepped off. But she said that we want it to be authentic to this congregation, this space. So if it's material that maybe you've used in a different setting, but it's new to these folks, that would be permissible. We don't want you trying to dust off your Advent sermon and pass it off in September, right? But if you have something that you think that worked very well, in a previous space, and you're introducing it here for the first time, that'd be fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. So I'm not seeing any other questions. So I'm gonna move it to kind of our last part here with the paper is done now what with Meredith Hinton.
Hi, everyone. My name is Meredith Hinton. I am a deacon in Full Connection, and I serve at Davidson UMC, and I am primarily, like vocation-wise, a youth pastor. So that's what I do here, among other things. And I think that my topic is the most fun topic because it means we're talking about the scenario where your paper is complete and all of the requirements and everything that you've needed to do have been compiled into one document and uploaded. And so now what do you do? And hopefully you were able to view the video that is on the Board of Ordained Ministry YouTube playlist, where I kind of detail some specific things. If you haven't, I think it's embedded in an email that you have from Emma Sherrill, I want to say, and you can go and reference that. So I'm not going to hit every single point, but I do want to reiterate a couple of what I think are the most important points that you've most likely heard already today. And because y'all are going up for Full Connection, you have been there, done that on the provisional level. So this isn't new to you. But what I think is always helpful is reminders of things that we have heard before and reminders of things that kind of seem like common sense at this point. It does help to restate it. So one of the things that I want to say that I don't think could ever be overstated is once you have finished writing your paper, make sure that you have answered every single question. You'd be amazed at how often questions go unanswered because it was missed somehow. And it's a large ask. This paper that you're writing is a big piece of work in front of you. And no doubt you come at it at different times in different ways. So just please be meticulous and make sure that you've answered every question that was asked. Also, make sure that you yourself sit down and read through your paper. We on the board, whenever we sit down and we read through your paper, we sit down and we read through your paper. So you can kind of put yourself in our shoes and sit down and think, someone just received this. What are they seeing? How are they receiving me on paper? The other thing that I want to say is have two different types of proofreaders. Have your proofreader for grammar, for any kind of spelling errors that you may have made, sentence structure, things like that. Have a person do that. Whenever I was coming through, I had a retired English teacher in my congregation, and I asked her if she would please proofread my paper for me. And I invited her to send it back to me with her suggestions, but to please not correct them herself. Because I emailed it to her and asked her just to make the comments of things that needed to change so that I could adjust those myself. And then obviously the other type of proofreader that we strongly encourage that you have is a content reader, which obviously United Methodist clergy person or two of them would be a good idea to read through your paper and just think about how are the words that you've chosen to express your thoughts or your experience on this particular topic, are they reflective of a United Methodist theology and perspective? That's really important. So have a content reader. Obviously, your content reader cannot be someone who currently serves on the Board of Ordained Ministry, but there's a ton of clergy in our conference, and hopefully you're well connected enough that you have a couple people that you could reach out to. If you're not and you're worried about that, please reach out to me or someone, and we'll make sure to make some suggestions of people or try to connect you with someone. Let me think. Whenever you go to submit your paper, ask for whoever you email your paper to turn it in. Ask for them to email you back to confirm that they received your paper, and also ask them when they receive your paper to check the links. Because you want to make sure that everything went through correctly and that somehow in the internet and out of your hands, something doesn't get messed up or crazy or weird all of a sudden. So ask for confirmation for those things, and that'll be good peace of mind for you. And you'll know that you have submitted everything appropriately. But the other thing that I want to say is when you finish your paper and you've submitted it and you've gone through all of those steps, please take a sigh of relief and feel really good about yourself, because you had to make sacrifices to make time to write that right, and prepare that. And saying yes to this process means saying no to a lot of other things. And that's okay. This is a season, and it's an important season. And it's really good for you. But you once you submit your paper, like a big chunk of it is done. So I would encourage you to celebrate, thank the people who have supported you, and I would say take a break from your paper for a few days. Like just take a break from it, from thinking about it. I think that distance and Sabbath from big pieces of work is a really good thing to like refresh our brain and have a second to do something that we enjoy. And then please go back to it. Go back to it and familiarize yourself with what you've said. Own your paper, own what you have said. If, you know, we're all growing, we're all learning, we're disciples. And if you go back and you read something in your paper and you've submitted it, but you have a new way to think about it, or you've learned something recently where, man, if you could go back and rewrite that section, you would add this or do this, make a mental note about that, because the folks on the board of ordained ministry, we're all in process too. We're all learning and growing too. And that's a really good thing. But know what you've written, own what you've written, and then have some mock interviews with people. That was the most intimidating thing in my process for me to initiate and do, was to set up times for mock interviews. I did not like doing that, but I did it. And I'm really glad that I did, because this is second nature stuff. This is the air we breathe. This is the way we see the world. And being able to have conversation in the moment with people where it flows and it's authentic is so incredibly important. So those are just some highlights that I wanted to bring back up from what I shared in the video and create an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you may have.
Well, the other
Awesome.
question I have is I wanted to make sure that I get your information, so if I need some help, and I know you gladly, you know, offer your desire to help somebody in terms of reading over some of the documents. So I would love if you can. I have one person that I have been able to contact so far that was recommended as one of my mentors as far as this assignment is concerned. The other ones I have not been able to get them. Either they have left or they are retired and gone somewhere. So I would love to have a few more to add to the list. So make sure that I have people read over my papers.
Thank you. And we will be happy to connect you with some people. As someone who serves on the board of ordained ministry, I will not be able to read anyone's papers ahead of if you're assigned to me and I'm interviewing you. But I will, there's so many wonderful people in our conference who would be glad to read papers and help walk alongside clergy people. So if we can connect you with anybody, we'd be glad to do that.
And remember, you guys will do a mock interview as part of REOM on January 29th.
Say that again, Megan.
Y'all are gonna participate in mock interviews on January 29th.
Okay.
As part of REOM.
Yeah. But by then we have already submitted our papers.
Right, but that's for the mock interview. You just need to, I mean, we can get you a list of names of people who maybe could like read and look over your paper. I was just letting you know because Meredith mentioned mock interviews that that y'all would have the opportunity. I mean, I think you should do multiple, but you will have that opportunity as well.
Okay. But I would love if you can recommend a few of them to me.
Okay, well, why don't we set up a Zoom? Why don't you email me and we'll set up a Zoom and maybe we can chat about it.
That would be great.
Okay.
That would be great. Thank you.
Awesome. So any other questions? We're good. Okay, so you guys know that you can always reach out to me with any questions that you have. The people that were here today, you can reach out to them. I know that this is a is a really big step and a really big process. And so we want to support you however we can along the way. I'm gonna have like I said, I'll get the checklist and things out to you before you guys meet on Tuesday. So y'all have, I'm gonna do everything digitally, so but that you have access to all of that. And I'm excited about seeing you guys next week. And if you have questions as you're reflecting, we can talk about it. We'll have 2 other people with us on the board from the board next week who'll be here to talk with you at the writing workshop. And then also if you're a 4th year, we'll have several there that'll talk with you on Thursday too. So you'll still have opportunities to ask questions. Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm gonna close us out with like a benediction. So pray with me. May God give you time, focus, and the spirit you need to write from a heart that's grounded with prayer. May your body, mind, and soul be sustained. And may God send you diligent proofreaders, working technologies at just the right moment, and plenty of coffee. Remember, God has called you and will guide you to your next most faithful step. Amen. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks. You good, Josh? Do you have any questions? Okay. Cool. Emma, are you here? Okay, I'm gonna end this then.